The Solana price continues to climb even higher, topping out today at $194 after an incredible run. Can Solana continue to defy the charts and push even higher, or is something happening in the markets, the overall crypto market, especially to the Bitcoin price, which is showing that there's something happening on the horizon for crypto? In today's episode, we're going to look at the Solana chart as well as Bitcoin chart and some market psychology to see what is going on in the overall crypto space and what that potentially might mean for the Solana price in the shorter to medium term. So guys, in the last couple of days, I've been talking about this rising wedge pattern for Solana, and ultimately what this does tend to be is a bearish pattern, and usually this is supposed to break to the downside, but obviously, as you know, Solana has continued to push and done the unthinkable, pushing all the way from $140 all the way up to $194 in the last sort of 24 hours or so. These lines on the left denote the Fibonacci retracement from a previous swing high to a swing low, and it shows that this level was pretty much the very top level for Solana in terms of where it should be aiming for. And usually what they tend to top out at is here on the 3.618, but as you can see, Solana has done the unthinkable and pushed all the way through and is currently dropped to find some support at around these levels, crucially around the $180 level, which is in line with this top level here. Previously, I talked about down on the RSI, this bearish divergence putting in lower highs as it was rising in price, showing the price getting weaker. But then today, you can see again, we've broken all the way through that and we put in a higher high on the RSI, which has pretty much devalued this bearish divergence, which I was talking about yesterday. Now, another thing we can do to make a bit more sense of what's going on, before we had this local top on the 4th of September, we took a bit of a cool off. If we drop the Fibonacci tool from the top there down to the bottom, you can see that the 3.618, which is the golden number, we pretty much came up perfectly. We wicked through it and then we were swiftly rejected back down. We've then found support at the 2.618 and in line perfectly with the top of this white line. Now you might want to consider what it is exactly that moves the price in charts, and it's simply two emotions, one being fear and the other one being greed. When the price is going up hard, the fear exists in people thinking that they're not going to have another chance to buy at lower levels, that the price is going to go to $500, $1,000, etc. And they're sort of jumping on, which is pushing the price further up. What happens as well is people can take bigger bets perhaps than they can necessarily afford to lose, so that if we do suddenly have a bit of a correction down like this, then we get a lot of people selling off for the fear that maybe they've gone in a bit too hard and that they're going to potentially see a dip and lose their money. And as people sell off, we can see a bit of a snowball effect down to the downside. Now, bringing your attention across, this is based, if we look at the fear and greed index, this is for the entire crypto market, so obviously including Solana, but not just Solana, and it's showing 79. Obviously, we've seen Bitcoin and the entire crypto market rallying really nicely recently, and the smaller market cap cryptos such as Solana and others have started to grow really, really quickly against Bitcoin. And that's because Bitcoin has a huge market cap, close to $1 trillion. Solana currently sitting between $40 and $50 billion. Obviously, in terms of percentage moves, it's not so difficult for something like Solana to go up much more aggressively than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin needs a huge amount more money in it, as well as Ethereum, etc. If we look at this article about Solana over on Forbes.com, one of the many Ethereum rivals is jostling for attention, has now climbed to the 7th spot among the world's top 10 largest cryptocurrency after its price has tripled in about 3 weeks, giving it more value than $42 billion. The market could be getting dangerously hot, however, with the Crypto Fear Index, a measure of the market sentiment, showing traders are back in extreme green zone. Now, we obviously need to be a bit cautious when we see the level of fear and greed going up this high. If you remember back to sort of May time when we saw Bitcoin flying up to all-time highs, we saw Ethereum rallying super hard, loads of other cryptos rallying super hard, and if you remember the sentiment, it was very much along the lines of, we're all going to be rich, you know, it's all very exciting, and eventually we did have that big sell-off, and we did sort of dump towards the downside, and now at the moment we are building back towards that upside. So if we do see a sell-off, it doesn't mean that the bull market is over and that we're not going to see a $300, $500, perhaps even a $700 Solana by the end of the year, which I think is very reasonable given the prediction of the Bitcoin flow model, which is predicting $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. If Bitcoin is to 2x by the end of the year, obviously it needs to add another $1 trillion to its market cap, whereas Solana currently sat at around $40 billion, needs to add only another $40 billion. Okay. in order to double. And if we think that Ethereum, one of its main competitors, has already got a market cap of 500 billion, then we can see that this is really realistic for the Solana price. But looking at what Warren Buffett says, be fearful when others are greedy. And he also says be greedy when others are fearful. And Warren Buffett, if you take a quick Google search to see who Warren Buffett is, $102.3 billion net worth. He obviously knows what he's talking about, so he'd be potentially going to pay attention to what he's saying and be very wary when the prices are so high. Now if we jump across to Bitcoin on the 4-hour, we can see something slightly different from what we've seen in Solana, where we have got this rising wedge. And although we did actually wick to the downside, we are still maintaining support at this key level here. The reason I'm looking at Bitcoin is obviously if Bitcoin falls, then we're going to likely see bigger corrections in some of the smaller altcoins. And the ultimate target for this would be down towards these levels of around 46,000. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to move there because we've got sort of old levels of support at around the $49,600 level, and this could see potentially a bigger drop in other cryptos. Now we pay close attention to what we see on the Solana chart. I want to show you something else that we can see on the Ethereum chart that happened back earlier on this year. Notice how we did have this break to the upside in Solana, and we have now had a bit of a rejection. Looking at the Ethereum on the 4-hour chart, this is back on the 25th of April. We went from $2,000 and we went all the way up to its top at $4,386. Notice that the top of this, we did kind of break towards the upside a little bit, and then we were rejected and we kind of came back down, we bounced again, and then we put in this top. And then we did have the Elon Musk news coming in that shook the entire crypto market, seeing this huge dump from $4,400 all the way down to this price at $1,600. Now that's a drop in price of around 70%. And in terms of the sentiment that people were talking about here, was Ethereum was going to go to $8,000, going to go to $10,000. And I still believe by the end of this year, it could well do that. But bear in mind, when the market gets too greedy, eventually it does cool off to the downside. Now, I'm not saying we should run and jump out of Solana, and I'm not saying that it's going to have a similar dump to what Ethereum experienced. But when the prices are like this, it does always have to correct, guys. One thing to consider, guys, is it might continue to push up, but every time it pushes up, the price is getting slightly weaker. There's fewer people who are prepared to buy at that price. People will start taking profits. And I am very aware that Ethereum and Solana are different projects. And in your eyes, Solana may be a great project and much better than Ethereum, but ultimately, the whole price is driven literally just by these two things, fear and greed. So be aware, guys. If you're feeling right now like I'm completely wrong and it's going to go really big, I might be wrong and it might go a little bit higher, but eventually it's going to take a cool off. And I don't mean just Solana, I mean Bitcoin and all of the other cryptos will take a bit of a cool off, which is nothing but healthy. And actually, if we can kind of have a bit of a sideways action, that will allow the RSI down here to recover a bit. And then what that will do is basically shake out these people who are buying too high at the top with money they couldn't necessarily afford to lose, and ultimately it stabilizes the price. If you think back to sort of 2017 as well, we haven't seen such aggressive drops in other cryptos, and that's because people are starting to enter the market who have an intention of holding for the long period of time, maybe the next couple of years, maybe the next 10 years. But if you're looking to make quick money and you're looking to throw money into it now with the idea that it's going to go to $300 in the next sort of couple of weeks, you could get very lucky and it could happen. But be aware, you should never be risking more money than you can afford to lose, and particularly buying when it's at this level and showing these patterns on the charts like this should be a bit of a cause for warning. If we do continue to the upside, then in my mind, the next level to break for Solana is the $200 level, which is obviously a big round number for Solana. And if it can break $200, then we might see something significant happen. Technically, if this was to break down, then we'd be down towards $70. Now, realistically, I really think that's quite unlikely for the Solana price. Bearing in mind that we put this high in here, showing a good level of resistance at the $150 level, which is also a key area for Solana in terms of the Fibonacci. Obviously, it's very difficult to look outside of the emotions that are driving you to do things, but as Warren Buffett says, the big money are basically doing the opposite of what all the retailers are thinking. So be very cautious, because they're the ones ultimately who will shift the market. In my opinion, if you're holding crypto and you're in it for the long term, there's no better way than making a passive income through using BlockFi. I'll leave a link down in the description. You can earn up to 8%. And today, if you sign up, you get a $250 bonus on your crypto, which is a bit of a no-brainer in my opinion. They cover most of the major cryptos, although at the moment they don't have Solana. But if you're looking to take some of those Solana profits and put them into something that's a little less volatile, then you can always go across to US dollar tether, or something which allows you then, if we do take a dip, to be able to buy in lower prices. And that's ultimately the game. Every time we take a dip, then we can buy lower, and then ultimately over a longer period of time, then we can kind of grow our net worth when it comes to crypto. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again soon with another video.